Hello and welcome to Grow, a podcast from Cambridge, and I'm here today to share another special early career episode of Grow. In today's episode we meet Douglas Deer, a newly CELTA qualified teacher at Stafford House in London. At the time of recording, Douglas had been teaching for just 3 weeks, bringing a fresh, first-hand perspective of what those initial days inside and outside the classroom truly feel like. Douglas reflects on his CELTA course experience and shares the tools and techniques he has already found most helpful as he begins to shape his own teaching practice. So, let's get started. I'm back in London again, here at Stafford House. I'm very pleased to be with Douglas. Good to see you. How are you today?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you. And how are you?
Yeah, doing fine, thanks. Yeah. Could you introduce yourself and perhaps say a little bit about the teaching context here at Stafford House?
I'm a summer teacher here at Stafford House, and Stafford House is an English language school. People from all over the world come over here to Stafford House to study in central London. The school's in a very central spot of Bloomsbury. So we have Bloomsbury Square right next to us, or Russell Square a bit further on. And the students' age range sort of goes from 16 to 40 years old.
Great. So you got a nice opportunity to experience busy, multilingual, multicultural environment here this summer then. I know from conversation with you before recording that you're a relatively recently qualified teacher, and you mentioned that you thought that teaching would be a good challenge for you on a personal level and on a professional level. Can you tell us a bit more about why you felt this way and what inspired you to become an English teacher?
So on a personal level, I believe in teaching a lot and the importance of teaching and education. And it was always something that I wanted to try out. And on a professional level, I always thought that teaching involves so many different skills that are not just applicable to teaching itself, but that could be transferred to all kinds of other jobs, interpersonal skills, explaining things. All of these really useful skills that you need for teaching are also things that would benefit you not just as a teacher, but you as a person.
Yeah. You really are quite recently qualified. I think, was it March that you completed the CELTA course?
Yes, I did it here actually
Right.
at Stafford House. I did it from mid-February till mid-March.
You must have done something well because you've got yourself a teaching job at the school that's connected to it. Tell us about your experience then on the CELTA course. What did you enjoy about it, and perhaps something that you found challenging about it as well?
It's a very challenging course because it's so intensive. Depending on what schedule you choose for the CELTA course, it can be very, very full on. I did the 4-week intensive course, which meant that I was here at Stafford House from 9 to 5 every day. I had teaching in the morning, and then I had to put into practice what I learnt in the morning in the afternoon, and I had to teach a class myself, which was so new to me, which was a huge challenge in itself. I really enjoyed it. Actually, John was one of my tutors, and another tutor, Alex, was my tutor here at Stafford House. So they were very inspiring people to me, and I had a really great group on my CELTA course. We really gelled, and I think I've got friends for life also from that CELTA course.
That's nice. And I remember, if I think back to my own experience of doing CELTA, it's a great value to have that sort of supportive environment while you throw yourself in at the deep end and do something new on an intensive course. How do you feel that set you up for then your first experience post-course of going into the classroom, knowing that there wouldn't be an observer at the back and that your peers wouldn't be sort of critiquing your teaching, etc.?
What's really good with a CELTA course is that you become very self-reflective, and that's something that I think you really need to have as a teacher. It's very important to be self-reflective, and when you're going into class, trying to think about what maybe didn't go well, what went well in a lesson, what could you have changed. I think that's probably the biggest thing that came out of the CELTA course directly after and going into teaching.
And has your confidence grown now walking into the classroom, knowing that you're responsible for ensuring that it all works and that there are objectives achieved, etc.?
Yeah, well, you come out of the CELTA course with so many techniques and so many different ways of solving a problem that, you need to go in feeling that you're qualified, you're confident, and that you can do this. So it's also a question of having that confidence and to feel like you can really guide the students.
Is there anything in your early experience, either on the course or teaching post-course, that sort of confirms that teaching is the right pathway for you professionally?
There's a lot of great moments in this experience. I've only been at Stafford House for a little more than 3 weeks now. So there's been some things that I've really enjoyed, like having a student tell me that the class went really well, or getting support from my colleagues when I've got a difficult situation. I think those are probably some of the highlights that have come out of my experience so far.
Those are probably some of the most rewarding experiences you've already had. How do you balance planning and flexibility in your lessons?
Because I've just recently graduated from the CELTA course, I think I'm still at a stage where I'm planning a lot. So I'm still at a discovery stage where flexibility is needed, but sometimes the planning is just there already. So I feel like I need to fall back on that. But I can appreciate that flexibility is a very important thing for teaching. And I'm developing that bit by bit, lesson by lesson. For example, if there's new vocabulary, I try to board it up, try to explain vocabulary or any functional language that can help. I board that up and I try to explain to the students, give an example. Flexibility is also a very important tool when teaching. But because I'm so fresh to this job, I feel like planning is probably what I prioritize the most at the moment.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And I remember early on in my own teaching career devoting far more time than I probably had to ensuring that I was comfortable going into my lessons. Have you developed anything yet that sort of helps you to see that you can plan more efficiently or sort of get things done without consuming too much of your time?
I try to really be efficient with my time. Yes, I would say planning ahead, doing things, not leaving anything till later is important in any job, obviously, but especially in teaching where preparation can take so long that if you push anything back a bit, that can really eat up a lot of your time.
And you've perhaps, from what you've said there, got a mechanism for making sure that you balance your work life and your home life properly, which I think is probably a good idea.
While they take a quick break, it's time for another top tip. And we're talking about life competencies. Ceci, my name is Matt Elman.
And I'm Cecilia Lemos-Harmon.
We work on the professional learning and development team here at Cambridge. And my question for you, Ceci, is how do themes like global citizenship, oracy, well-being relate to life competencies? So far we've talked about things like critical thinking, creative thinking as life competencies, but how do these other themes fit in?
All right, so when you think about global citizenship in itself is not a competency, but you need different competencies in able to enact or own your global citizenship, right? And those competencies can be found throughout the life competencies framework and the different competencies there.
So we could think of the individual competencies in the Cambridge Life Competencies Framework as ingredients, and that we kind of mix these together
and
to
get
create
different
oracy,
cakes.
the oracy cake,
The oracy
global
cake.
citizenship cake.
the well-being pie. That's it. And it's different combinations. And one could make a case that, all competencies are good you need all the competencies for global citizenship. And maybe that's the first tip that I have to give today. It's don't try to do all the competencies and do everything at once, because it may feel very overwhelming. So there's something about developing the ability of picking and choosing and determining which competencies are more relevant for certain themes or certain areas or
for your learners.
That's
a key point, isn't it? I think whenever we look at a classroom activity, and it can be something that's not specifically designed for life competencies, it could be something very routine in the classroom, you can always identify different competencies, a range of different competencies within that one activity.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really hard to separate them out. And so when you're trying to develop any one competency, you've got a selection, right?
Zoom in,
yeah, and
focus.
you have to make that choice yourself. And there's no right answer there, right?
No.
Teachers can make that decision based on what they feel is best in their own context.
Or more needed, yeah.
Yeah.
Can we give teachers any other top tip?
My top tip would be to check out the booklets that are available as part of the Cambridge Life Competencies Framework. So we have booklets on each competency, and we also have booklets newly produced on areas like oracy and well-being that help you identify the different ingredients that go into these.
And where to find them. And that's our top tip for today.
Are there any teaching tools or techniques that you've found particularly helpful so far?
I really like pre-teaching vocabulary. I always think pre-teaching is a really good way of introducing language that's going to pop up either in a text or in audio, and already waking up that language in the students' minds and making them sort of feel the language before they even discover it in the text is a really good tool for them to sort of pre-record the language before they discover it. Also, CCQs. I really enjoy using CCQs. You've got to time them well, and sometimes it can just feel like you're asking a question very randomly. But if you do it in the right way with the right tone and the right timing, they can be really useful to really awaken students' understanding of a particular word or expression.
Yeah, I think building good habits with concept checking questions is vital to part of creating good learning experiences, isn't it? Are you finding that it's coming more naturally to incorporate CCQs into your teaching practice?
It wasn't natural to me at all pre-CELTA, obviously. And I was struggling to integrate them into my lessons during the CELTA course. And sometimes I still find myself struggling to use them naturally, but it's something I'm really working on. And when it does happen well, it really is effective for the students.
Yeah, good habit to build. One thing that would be really good to hear from you would be any advice that you've got that you could give to other new teachers in similar positions, those that are just starting out or recently qualified?
The first job will be a roller coaster. You're always thrown in the deep end, I think, in any job anyway, especially with teaching where so much preparation is required. Like we were saying, very time consuming. So, finding those strategies to deal with those sorts of issues and trying to find a work-life balance, quite important, I would say. And don't be afraid to ask your colleagues for help, because there's a lot of very experienced people out there who are in the staff room with you and who can point you to different things that could make your lessons much better or improve on something. Yes, and enjoy it. As stressful as it can be at the start, just try and enjoy it, and always think of it as an opportunity to learn something, and that everything's just a learning curve, and that once you're past that curve, it just gets easier.
I think there's some really good tips and observations in there, and it's especially good to get it from somebody like yourself who's in this sort of very early stage of your teaching career. So thanks for that. Let's move on to the feature of this podcast that's called That Feeling When. I'm going to ask you to share a story of your own about that, if you would, please.
Yes, probably that feeling when two students are talking to each other, especially at a productive stage of a lesson, and you can hear them using something that you've taught them in the lesson, and it's all of that lesson was a build up to that moment where they can finally use that language or a piece of vocabulary, and it's always an amazing feeling to see them putting that into practice, and also seeing people laugh in your class. It's always a great feeling because you've given them an opportunity to meet someone or to laugh about a topic. So yeah, seeing funny moments between students is always a nice feeling, because it makes your class feel more engaging, not just for your students, but also for yourself. And also that feeling when a student tells you that they're enjoying your class. It's quite a nice feeling. Obviously, you should always be confident that your class is going well, because it's important to feel confident as a teacher. But getting some reward from the students is also a nice feeling, and yeah, it can just also make the teacher's day that little bit better.
Yeah, it definitely does, doesn't it? It's a very rewarding experience for a teacher, and that's why we do it, I think, isn't it? And there's no greater endorsement than the one that comes from your students, I think. And also, I like what you said about laughter in the classroom. It's a good indication that something's working well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what have you learned so far from the different groups of students that you've taught?
So far, I'm in my 4th week here at Stafford House, and in the first 3 weeks, I was teaching an A2 level class, so an elementary class. First class teaching as a profession, and I really felt like the students were showing me what they needed and how I could help them, being put in that situation of really trying to find everyone's needs and what each person maybe needed to focus on more. They were helping me also improve as a teacher as well, making me realize, it's also a big responsibility to take care of someone's learning, but also that every individual has very different needs, and making me more sensitive to that, actually.
And what opportunities generally do you think that an English language teaching career can open up for you?
I think there's a lot of opportunities, obviously, not just here in the UK, but globally. It's probably a fantastic job if you want to travel a bit during your life, because I think, they're looking for English teachers all around the world all the time. So yeah, being an English language teacher can really bring you to different places that you never expected to go to, maybe. One of the people on my CELTA course was hesitating between going either to Saudi Arabia or China, which just gives you an idea of the different paths that you can take with this job. Funnily enough, I discovered the CELTA course not here in the UK. Well, not on a sort of UK British website, but I was actually looking at the British Council in Bogota in Colombia when I discovered the CELTA course. I was just looking at opportunities out there, seeing where I could maybe go next, potentially. And it was funny that I discovered the CELTA course in South America, actually, technically, rather than here in the UK.
All right, let's move on to some quickfire questions then, Douglas. Morning lessons or afternoon lessons?
I haven't done any afternoon lessons yet, so I don't know how I'd feel about an afternoon lesson. I enjoy morning lessons because obviously you get it done sooner in the day, and I like waking up early in the morning. It's a nice feeling, sort of feeling the buzz of the city in the morning and getting to class and feeling busy. So I'd probably say morning lessons.
Teaching really engages the brain, doesn't it? I think it's a good way to start the day.
Yeah.
What is your worst teaching habit at the moment?
Sometimes I'm not clear enough in my instructions, and that hinders the process of learning. So I think that's one thing that I need to work on a bit more and improve on, is giving out instructions, and pronunciation work it's a hard one because you don't want to interrupt students, but you've also got to remember mistakes that they've made, so note them down somewhere. So you've got to do it strategically and remember to do it as well. So I think those are two things I could maybe improve on: instructions and pronunciation.
Mm-hmm. And the first step to improving on anything is recognizing that there's room for that improvement. Last one, digital resources or pen and paper?
I'm very traditional. I'd say pen and paper. Yeah. With the environmental problems at the moment, probably good if we switch to screens, although obviously screen time is terrible for us as humans. But I think something that we need to get used to. Switching that from screen to pen and paper can be actually nice for the students as well, because they get a break from the screen, and actually using your hand and writing something down, you have a different interaction with that as a human, I'd say.
Do you find that the learners that you've taught so far prefer to use digital technology or pen and paper when they're studying with you?
I don't tell everyone don't use paper or just use a screen, and I can see that there's always a variety of students still today, because you get some very young students here at Stafford House, and we always say, oh yeah, younger people are using technology more, they're always on their screens and everything, but actually you can still see quite a lot of diversity in that respect.
Douglas, thank you very much. Nice talking to you today.
Thank you very much.
Cambridge is where your world grows.